Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, Episode 2. It's called Ad Astra Per Aspera. So full spoilers for the episode, as always. And it was set up a little bit last episode. Obviously it was a dangling thread from last season, but this is the episode that deals with Una's trial and her hiding as an Illyrian among Starfleet. And the plot involves Peck going to this hotshot Illyrian lawyer to come and take her case, reluctantly, might we add. But a lot of the episode builds up and then becomes it's a classic Star Trek trial episode where they're arguing why this was right or wrong, and maybe make a few inspirational little speeches along the way, because that tends to be Star Trek's MO. So at least starting with Picard. I feel like that really started with Picard. There were some trial episodes in the original show as well, to be fair. But
famously, the Pike trial episode.
That is true, yeah, the menagerie. But I think we think of Picard first when we think of trial Star Trek episodes.
I mean, there's quite a lot of the drumhead in this.
Yeah, there's some drumhead for sure thematically here. But even Measure of a Man and things like that. There's a lot of classic Picard examples. So yeah, we'll get into it. So Tara, what did you think of Ad Astra Per Aspera?
I thought the episode was pretty good. I want to sing its praises because I think a lot of people are, and I'm just sort of like I don't know, it is good. I think it'll age very well. But in the moment, it's just okay. I don't have a lot of emotion attached to the character of Una, so I thought it was very strange that this was the second episode of the season. I know we've had a whole season with her, and that was very fun, but I don't know if I was as invested as maybe I should have been. I don't know. What about you?
I really liked it. I thought the first episode was good, but kind of mixed. It wasn't its best by any means. We kind of talked about that last time. I think this was more of a full meal. This was something where I came into it, it established its goal early on, and it did a Star Trek trial episode pretty well. I thought, when we got to the arguments and the cases and the ups and downs of, it looks bad for her now, or what point is the defense attorney trying to get to? By the time those points were made, I was really invested, and I think I liked it because, much like the Drumhead to some extent, which is kind of arguing some similar ideas, it makes Starfleet, or the Federation itself, the villain in the story, but not in the way that's annoying about a lot of modern Trek, where, there's an evil admiral behind the villain's plot, and there's everyone's Starfleet's been infiltrated at every level. It's not that. It's not Starfleet is evil in that way. This is more realistic, kind of institutionalized thing.
Sheer effing hubris involved.
No, none of that. No sheer effing hubris. But I appreciate that because it feels kind of Starfleet is always presented as this thing that's very wholesome and trying to be the best that it can be. So I like when there's a light shined on it that says, no, but there's still these things that you're not good at. There's still these prejudices you have. It's why I like, the best thing about Star Trek 6 Undiscovered Country is the idea that the main characters have this prejudice against Klingons, and that's kind of holding up, the potential of the Klingons, having peace with the Federation and perhaps even joining it, right? I like that because it's okay, as good and as forward thinking as you are, you still have these prejudices for whatever reason. And the Drumhead and Next Generation plays in that as well. It's it's the stigma of the Romulans is what plays on that. Whereas here it's the stigma of the eugenic wars and any genetic enhancement, and just the Federation's harsh stance against anyone or any race that has genetic enhancements of any kind. But when they start making their arguments, it's very easy. I mean, hell, the lawyer brings up real things from our past, brings up that slavery used to be legal, brings up that, laws were wrong, but they were in place. So just because this is the law doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And she even brings up apartheid, and we just talked about District 9.
No, we haven't. That episode's not out yet, Tara.
Oh, well, surprise. What won the vote for Ace?
Well, they knew it won the vote, but the episode's not out yet, so I'm trying not to break continuity here, okay? But yes, go check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment over in Male Fuzz Movies for science fiction movie discussions with us. Coming up soon, District 9. Yeah, I got into the trial. I got into because I think why I like these types of episodes where it's challenging Starfleet's rules is that it's kind of trying to hold them up to scrutiny. And I think even just as something as simple as like the first admiral who's getting interviewed, who's that's not the right word, but he's on the stand.
Yeah.
What's the
questioned, really. It's just
yeah. I feel like there's a word I'm missing here, but whatever. Like one of the defense attorney, what's her name here, Nira. Like her sort of line of questioning, she brings up all the times he's broke the Prime Directive, and that's I actually really like that because that's like a running thing that we all do when we talk about Star Trek. Is just how much all the captains occasionally will bend that Prime Directive or break it because they feel like they've got a good reason to, and we always kind of like understand why.
And it's literally the first rule.
Yeah. So I like the idea that she's saying, hey, you bend these rules because you're using your judgment to say that in this example we should be bending the rule because it's the right thing to do.
No, I agree. And I understand like it's the second episode because they want to be more anthology, and it would be odd if they just waited till like the end of the season and didn't have the first officer there for the whole time. So I think that's why they put it in the second episode. The first episode was kind of like a fun episode about more, Spock and what's going on with the nurse.
Chapel.
Thank you.
Aren't you a Star Trek fan, Tara?
Yeah, it's late. Okay.
She's been a Star Trek character since the 60s.
Yes, I know. I swear I'm a fan.
You're a fact because she was...
These are all new characters to me, okay?
Yeah.
They've all been recast. They all look different. They all sound different. They all have like personalities that are different. But okay, so yeah, I understand why this is the second episode. The first episode was a fun adventure with the younger crew, and now we get back into the deep things. They did the same thing in the season of Lower Decks where like the captain is arrested at the end of it, and then like literally it's all resolved in the first episode of the next season so that we can get back into the fun storytelling,
Yeah, that's not surprising for this show, though. I mean, I feel like this has come up before, where clearly this show wants to be more, episodic.
That's why I brought it up that way.
Yeah.
So they're not doing a full. They don't want to do a season-long thing if we wait to see how they're going to get Una out.
Yeah, because that would mean not having her for like the whole season. So yeah, it makes sense. I get it. I'll tell you what.
But I don't know. This had so much. Like it should be more impactful than it was for me. I don't know. Maybe I was just distracted, but I do think it is a good episode, and I do like the character of the lawyer, the one that's representing Una. I am not a fan of Captain Pike's fling from the pilot episode. She's back.
Yeah. I mean, I think the impact kind of came from the story itself. Like, it wasn't so much that I came into this being like super attached to Una necessarily. She's been fine, but like I wouldn't say I've like she's a character that's particularly like connected with me. But it was more just through the arguments and through the things it was more the ideals of what they were saying that kind of made it impactful to me, as opposed to like the character themselves that was on trial, or it was more what it represented in the grand idea of challenging Starfleet. So on that front, I think it all did kind of work for me.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I'll tell you a scene that I really loved. So there's a scene early on. It's a bit of comic relief, but I thought it worked really well. So you've got Ortega's and the Doctor sitting, watching Spock, and like it's like the assistant prosecutor Vulcan character, who's just kind of this.
Were you expecting him to be a Romulan, a secret Romulan? Because I sort of was.
No,
that would have been too drumhead like. We were like, oh.
Well, also,
look, what about you?
Yeah, but it would make no sense though, because no one's ever seen a Romulan when they see them in the original series. That's a surprise to all of them, including Spock.
Yeah, that's true.
So that would have been like continuity breaking if they'd done that. Unless it was
That's a
something that
very good
only we,
point.
unless it was something that only we found out, like it was like a secret thing in a scene at the end.
You're right. Romulans are. It's a bad word at the writers' room. They're not allowed to say it.
Yes. So no, I like there's a scene where they're sitting watching Spock in this Vulcan, and Ortega's is doing like commentary for it, where she's sort of pretending to know what they're saying to each other and just making fun of how they're just being very logical, and it's a really dull conversation. And she's like, look, he's being all buddy with the enemy. And he's like, no, I don't think so. Like, you get to read their body language. Like, they two don't like each other. And she's like, what? And then Benga's like, yeah, like clearly. And then the payoff to it is Spock gets up at the end of the scene, walks over, and he sighs like a little bit when he stands up, and he walks over and says, I have to apologize for that, witnessing that outburst.
My outburst. That was funny. I did laugh also.
Yeah, I could chuckle out of that. I thought it was a nice use of like the Vulcan, like setup for the joke. So I got a joke out of that. But it also plays into the themes of the episode of like Mbenga like understanding and like knowing Spock well enough to tell like what he's feeling in that moment. Kind of leads into the themes of the episode, which is like, another group of people that you're not sympathizing with, kind of thing. It's done in a jokey way. There's no harm to it. It's a completely harmless scene, but it kind of does set up in a fun little way the themes.
There is a parallel there that I didn't really see when I watched it, but you're right. There's, someone who's judging the Vulcans based on the surface thing of what they know about them, is that they're very logical and they're very formal. But there's actually something else going on, like something emotional happening that we don't get to really see. Yeah.
And with the Vulcans, it's like it's not quite the same as hiding something because you have to hide it from people. But yeah, there is kind of like a hidden element to it that Mbenga's witnessing.
Spock does have to hide it, though.
Okay, Spock does, but Vulcans in general.
He hasn't gone through his colonar yet.
Yeah, but Vulcans in general haven't. Stop, you're muddying the point up here. Come on. This is starting to be muddied. You get what I'm saying?
I just have to vindicate myself for after the Nurse Chapel thing.
This is not the first time you've forgotten something Star Trek-y early on in the review and then felt the need to correct later on to try and make it look, hey, I know Star Trek things.
What's that guy's name again? Dr. Shins? Bones, Tara, Bones. His name is Bones.
What's the guy with the pointy ears? Spock. Yeah, so no, like I think the setup's good, and even the lawyer Nira, who takes on the case, like she doesn't really want to do it for Una, even though they used to be friends. She kind of sees Una as someone who turned her back on the rest of her kind by wanting to be with Starfleet. So you get kind of like the story throughout the questioning of like her understanding why Una made these choices, and then by the end sympathize to the point where they're holding hands at the end when they're getting the results of the trial. So you have that kind of reforming. So that's a story that's completely self-contained, because we meet this character this episode, we see how she feels about Una, we see how she feels about her own race, and then over the course of the episode it kind of develops into its own little story. So even though you've got this story that's informed by a lot of what's came before, which is the actual Illyrian trial part, you've got this more personal part that is just self-contained in the episode. So that's why also partly why it works really well as an episode on its own. So also very good. And then you've got the threat of Pike getting into trouble for not, turning her in immediately, but I actually kind of really liked. So obviously it's got the gotcha, right, where she eventually is like, hey, but there's this clause in Starfleet law, right, and it's all about asylum seeking, and she tries to flip it.
It's the empathy clause. Yeah, that of course Starfleet would have.
Yeah, but like I think what makes it good as a gotcha is not so much that it works well enough on its own itself, right? Is like, hey, she's asylum seeking. She was feeling persecuted. She feared for her life. She makes it all work.
The religious freedom thing, right? Too.
And ultimately, she asks, by admitting who she is and wanting to still be in Starfleet, she's effectively asking that, which is the third and final thing. But the part of it I really liked was the part that gets Pike off the hook, is because earlier on when she was interviewing the Admiral, who used to be a starship captain, April, yeah, Captain April, or Admiral April now, when she was questioning him, and she's like, hey, this time you broke the Prime Directive. This time you broke the Prime Directive. And his argument, and this was accepted generally by everyone in the room, by the court, that there are times when a starship captain has to make choices based on judgment to uphold things. So
captain's discretion. Yeah.
So very quickly she's like, so Captain Pike was, it says right here that a captain's discretion when someone asks for asylum has to be taken, and she directly compares it to every decision that April stood there and defended when he was on stand. So it's like, you know what? All of that paid off. Like, all of that wasn't just about trying to, like, get him to sympathize and say something nice about Una, even though I'm sure that'd have been nice if he did, but ultimately he stood his ground and said, but I would have made this choice because it would have broke the rules. She flipped it into every argument he just made applies to what Pike did as well, and kind of like, it's like, by saying that what he did was wrong, you're admitting that everything he did was wrong, and you're the hypocrisy of it. I like that. It was a really good kind of seeded thing, because the actual clause that she reads out, right, it's good, but it's also something that we don't hear about until that moment. So the writers, in a way, have like just made it up there, right? Obviously they knew going into the episode they had it, but that's not something that's set up earlier. That's like, it feels like it's not a Deus Ex Machina. I don't want to say that. That feels a bit unfair, because it feels plausible that it would be in there, like you say. It feels natural that it exists. But the other parts with the captain and the question earlier is something that's set up and paid off. So that feels, as an audience, more fulfilling. It's more like, oh no, she's got you because this was all done earlier. And the seeds were planted so that you couldn't argue it. And that's what makes it satisfying, I think, as a piece of writing when the gotcha comes back round.
Yes. Yeah, and I do like the idea of them like starting with the Prime Directive, because I think that's one that we can all, as Star Trek fans, I mean, you sort of already brought it up, we're like, yeah, the Prime Directive is a real thing, and it's, it's taken very seriously, and there are episodes where it's really, hard pressed, like we cannot break this. But I mean, even our favorite captains throughout the different series have broken it. It's like a coin flip, right? Whether or not they're going to decide to break the Prime Directive in any episode. And I think using that as a starting point is enough for fans to be like, okay, that's good that they're sort of addressing that in this show, because obviously we accept that that's the thing that gets broken a lot. So let's see where she goes from here. And then bringing in this other clause, I think, was a very a smart way to set it up, Yeah.
Plus, our argument ultimately is about empathy and like making the choice that's like having this strict law is very prejudiced, and having this sort of thing where just because, obviously what Khan did, obviously eugenics, wars, all that stuff was bad, right? There's no denying that. But Una, like all other Illyrians, don't pick that they're going to be Illyrian. Like, they're modified before they're even born. So you're basically discriminating against her for a choice that she did not have. And that's a really strong argument. It's something that we can all sympathize with. But I think start with the Prime Directive is good on like you say, a Star Trek fan level, because aside from just like what we've talked about, which is like, yeah, they do break that rule a lot, so we can sort of exploit that as like a reason to say this rule's okay to break too under the right circumstances. But I think just from a start in the trial in a place that we can all like have like our feet in the same place. The Prime Directive is this consistent thing throughout all of Star Trek, and it's something that we all understand. So by starting with that and then going from there, you're starting as all in a place where all of the audience can feel comfortable. Okay, we all understand this law. Because ultimately, like, I'm sure some nerds have probably written some big book of Star Trek laws, right? But that's not something that 99.9999% of the audience knows or cares about, and even the writers shouldn't care about it that much, because ultimately they should have their own laws that are relevant for their own writing, for their own episodes, for their own stories. But starting with that one that's like it's a bedrock, it's a linchpin of like all of Star Trek, and then going from there and expanding outwards makes it feel like we start in a place of understanding, and everything can be contextualized from that point. So it's like nothing in this ever feels like it to me like it takes like a giant leap and then starts to betray logic of Star Trek. It feels to me like it starts in the place that we all understand and then builds on it naturally. And the arguments that Neera makes as she's making her argument, and she's asking Una all these questions about feeling scared, about almost dying from a broken leg, because if they went to a doctor they'd find out what she was, so they had to go to like a shady backdoor doctor who wouldn't like rat them out, and it was this sort of thin thing, and you start to sort of, you know, think of a lot of real parallels to life, and like, you know, living, you know, what you know, obviously there's some obvious examples of slavery and stuff, but this felt more to me like someone in Nazi Germany having to, like, you know, not be caught being Jewish. Or maybe a better example would be like a country where like abortion's completely illegal and you have to go to like a shady, like, you know, black market doctor to have that done, something like that.
Honestly, I think the episode does a very good job of drawing parallels to just about anybody who's persecuted for something.
Oh yeah,
like sex workers can't go to, you know, the police, or even hospitals sometimes, and people. Obviously, there's like the just general bigotry involved. People who are name calling, people who are tattling on other people, much like Jewish people in during Nazi Germany, or even Christ, like even today, it seems terrible. And or even like you know, gay and trans people, I think have a lot of parallels here. People who have to hide who they are. And people who you know, were born in the wrong body, or born, you know, this was decided before they were even born, you know, so I think there's a lot of parallels going on, and I think the episode does a really smart way of just putting everything under one roof.
Almost anyone,
Illyrian.
Almost anyone can relate to this. Basically, is effectively what you're saying. There's almost no group that in some capacity can relate to what this story is, and that makes it strong. And I love, actually, you know, it keeps cutting back to the crew watching this take place, you know, except for the ones that sometimes they're in being questioned, because a few of them go in for character witnesses, but we keep cutting back to the crew, and there's some good moments where, like, you know, Nero will talk about how diverse Starfleet is, and there's like a shot like just going across the crew of like the Enterprise, and it's like, oh yeah,
that's always been the Star Trek way.
Yeah, if anything, I would critique it just in context of the show, of saying there is maybe too many humans on this crew. There should be a couple more aliens. You killed off your one of your main aliens.
Well, by the time we get to
season.
Discovery, we get a ton of them, which is great.
What do you mean? Discovery was before this?
Oh yeah, you're right. Discovery had so many aliens.
I know.
Though. It still does.
Well,
it's like
2 seasons,
30% human.
Yeah, 2 seasons of Discovery were before this. I should be specific, because Star Trek nerds are very specific people, and they will nitpick that. But you know, but yeah, it's I like that framing of it, and I think it's kind of a celebration of a lot of what Star Trek typically is about and what it's championing. And challenging Starfleet and saying, as good as it is, and as widespread and as welcoming as it is to all these different alien races, and how a lot of things that are problems today on Earth and, you know, the real world seem to be somewhat fixed in Starfleet in the future, there's still these basically just the same things with a new coat of paint on them that still seem to have the same problems, right? This fear.
They're still working out the kinks. Yeah, you know, trying to. Like Una says, like, it's not perfect, but they believe that it could be.
Yeah, well, no, even that ties back into the drumhead, because that episode ends with, you know, one of Picard's points is that, you know, it's not, you don't just win this and it's over and everyone lives happily ever after. It's a constant fight. Like, that fear and like the bigotry can seep back in. People can look to other people as an excuse for why things aren't working and try and create that again. So it's always a constant thing you have to be vigilant about, making sure you don't let society slip back into those patterns. Yeah,
and not letting like skepticism turn into cynicism, like that Admiral did in that show.
Yeah, and then on top of that, like, yeah, so in this specific case, the eugenic wars being this kind of seed, a space seed, you might say. It's a reference to a classic Star Trek episode, Tara. See, the episode with Khan is called Space Seed.
What was the name of the ship?
Look at you. All right, go on. Show me how much bigger your Star Trek dick is.
Bay.
All right. You can have a bit of your Star Trek nerd card is like in processing.
Well, I was thinking about, you know, La'an and her name, and they bring it up in the episode even, like, is she allowed in Starfleet? Because they asked if she's related to Khan, and she says yes in this. I don't know how that relation, pans out, because he was put in a cryo sleep like 200 years before?
Well,
technically.
Well, to be fair, the person he was named after, Genghis, he got around a bit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, is she a descendant of somebody who's the result of eugenics? And is that, I mean, maybe she's far enough down the line that it's like not a big deal.
Yeah, but also, he could have had kids before he was worked on,
he was
right?
Augmented?
Yeah.
I think they were like grown.
Oh, are they? Okay, fair enough.
Enterprise has like a 3-part thing about it.
I don't remember if those details were in the either Wrath of Khan or the original episode, but
I can't remember. They might have been like there might have been some genetic manipulation like during the whole process.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's the idea that it's thinned out as generations have went on. I don't know.
Yeah.
That said, though, I mean, having said that, it's quite clear that Illyrians have to modify their kids before they're born, which would, to me, suggest that it doesn't get passed down anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because they have to change them so that they can survive on the planet they live on.
So clearly that says that it's not something that passes down once they've been modified. They have to like modify every new person. It's just something that they do culturally before the kid's even born. So that makes some sense. I did like that little bit of world building though, that Pike goes to like meet this lawyer and like he's like got a breather on because he can't breathe here, but everyone else is just walking around willy-nilly, not caring. I thought that was a good visual of him, like how determined he was to help Una, that he was like willing to like suffocate potentially.
I also love that they're like, I know you want to make a big speech because you're the captain and this is a trial show and that's what captains do in this show, but we're going to need you to sit down.
This anti-Pike slander that you are hell-bent on sticking to.
The less Pike, the better.
No, the more Pike, the better. Big Pike energy. That's what I want from this show.
I don't approve of this.
No, I liked I did like that because it was kind of this thing where he wanted to step in and do the big speech, and you're joking because you don't like Pike that you didn't want him to make a big speech, but I liked that he was told that actually will not help. All you're going to do is make things worse because they're going to ask you very specific questions, and it comes up anyway because the Vulcan, because that's the thing. Pike's girlfriend, who's the prosecutor, right? She, like, obviously she's very much about her job, and she's the one that even makes the point, hey, you can't take the stand because this is what I'm going to have to ask you if you do. So he's like, okay, point taken. She actually, when things get more emotional and like Una's talking about her upbringing and about like this fight that she witnessed as a kid and how they had to hide, but how they could pass for human and therefore they went to live with the humans and left their people behind. Which obviously applies to a lot of real things. It was impossible for me though, and probably because this also is used that same parallel a lot, but it was impossible not to think of X-Men. And obviously there's the meta thing here that she was actually X-Men. She was Mystique, the actress in the first 3 X-Men movies. So just a little bit of cross-pollination.
Patrick Stewart.
Also Patrick Stewart, that's true. So like when she's doing all this stuff and it is getting kind of emotional, and it's working, it's doing its job well, like she starts to like sort of seem sympathetic. She's starting to kind of smile a little bit, like she's kind of like, you know what, I'm kind of on her side. It's clear that she's kind of rooting for her at this point, even though it's her job to try and make the case against her. And the Vulcan next to her kind of can sense that, and he's like, no, let's not let emotions get into this.
Emotions are getting in the way here. I gotta win this.
Yeah,
he's very by the book.
I'm gonna go up and get this all exposed. And be like,
he's gonna mic drop it.
He's like, technically this is a conspiracy because Pike knew about it. So now we've got 2 people we have to take down, and everyone's like, no.
Dun, dun, dun. I also like that Pike didn't have to make a speech in this because I think that puts a lot of pressure on the writers to make sure that Captain Pike is like Picard or like
Yeah.
other captains, and I don't think that that's his character. I think he's too goofy for that. I can't see him making an important speech like that, and me not thinking that they're just trying to make him something that he's not.
Also,
So
I think
I'm glad they didn't do that.
I think the biggest thing that it does as well, aside from like our main characters, is that it forces them to give it all to this new character, Nira, and she ends up being a really good, well-rounded character by the end of the episode.
Yeah, I did like her. I thought she was good. She had she reminded me very much of the other lawyer from She-Hulk. I thought they were like almost the same character. Like she was just so strong and so good at it. At what she did, and everybody like looked up to her, and of course she wins everything and has great style.
Yeah, no, I thought like because she was allowed to like get this lion's share of screen time, where she kind of became the main character almost of the episode, and not only does she help obviously win and has this big mic drop moment, and they acknowledge at the end that this win's kind of a technicality. It's not really changing anything for the relationship, but the point was to set a precedent. Like that was kind of always the goal, was like, hey, if we win this, then this is something that we can always look back on and say, hey, you ruled this then. So it kind of it starts to
start.
It starts to steer the ship. The others starting to turn a bit, right? That's the point. But I think like not only does she get that going, she even like kind of sees into like Anne at one point in this episode wants to like break the rules and look at everyone's personal logs because she's convinced that someone like read hers, and that's why they know that she's Illyrian, because she felt annoyed and she said this in a personal log. And obviously Nira puts her mind at ease by saying, hey, no, it takes like 6 months to get like the approval from like multiple judges and stuff to like look at that sort of stuff and read it, so there's no way it could have been you. Which is obviously a big plot point because Una herself turned herself in, and that's why ultimately, it's like, hey, she's an asylum seeker because she asked for this. She's actually saying, and the other thing, of course, that it keeps bringing up is this idea that she has been an exemplary officer who has done great work for 25 years, and is all that mean nothing just because she's technically not what you thought she was? Like, I think that's where the comparison to someone being gay comes in, because that's a sort of like thing that can be hidden, and that's why the term in the closet exists, because people hide it, and then it's out in the open. Does it change the fact that she's been a great officer and saved all these lives, and like Anne herself like was saved by her and became a good Starfleet officer who's also saved lives as a knock-on effect of how good she is? All of those things, did they all mean nothing because of a technicality? Because she's not exactly something that she said she was. Does all that mean nothing? And obviously, sympathetically, you would say, no, of course it still means everything.
Of course not, yeah. And I do like that when La'an goes to Uhura and says, I want you to look into people's personal logs. Uhura says, no, Una is your mentor, but you're my mentor, and I'm not going to let you do this thing that's disappointing. I'm not going to let you break the rules here on a hunch kind of a thing. Like, this is not an appropriate moment to do that.
I wasn't really thinking about that moment, but you're right. It's like Uhura doesn't have a lot in this episode, but that little moment is very good, because it's like her standing her ground because she respects La'an and says, no, I'm not letting you. And what's funny about it is that ultimately them all going up as character witnesses does obviously paint Una in this very good light. You have her, you got Mbenga, and you got Spock, who all speak very highly of her throughout it cuts between them as they're making their statements, and it's all very sweet and whatnot. But I think it crescendos very nicely, because by the time we get to like the big gotcha closing arguments where she's making her case, and you've got the thing where the emotional part's working, and then the Vulcan comes in and sort of like makes it worse. It's always darkest just before the dawn, of the storytelling. And then, of course, the actual, like, the clause, the asylum seeker clause, which is used to kind of ultimately sway well, not the jury, but the admirals who are making these judgments. The judges, I guess. Yes, the 3 judges. We get an alien dude, a human, maybe it was 2 humans.
I'm pretty sure one's a Vulcan.
One's a Vulcan?
And one's a Tellarite. And one's a human.
Yeah. Yeah, Tellarite's the one that I wouldn't have known the name of. But yeah, there's like a sort of old-looking alien dude. Yeah, one's a Vulcan. Yeah, the Vulcan had although do we trust him? Because Vulcans with facial hair, I just think mirror universe.
That's true. Maybe it was in Tellurite. Maybe it's something else. But there wouldn't be too many aliens in the Federation at this point. In the Tellurites. I don't know. Anyway.
Your Star Trek knowledge is feeling shakier by the minute here, Tyra. I've got to say.
I know. I really need to rewatch something. Probably original series, honestly.
Has it been a while? I think because I was actually thinking early on when it was focusing so much on like going to the lawyer and then Nira going to see La'an, I was actually thinking we were going to see almost none of the rest of the crew this episode. I thought it was just going to be like them because like we got all the rest of the crew last episode. It was just going to, but I actually think having them all watch and react to the trial added a lot to those moments, because it was kind of like every argument that Nero was making in some way, like a lot of them could relate to and like feel something from, and I think that, you know, I appreciate that. So yeah, I added a lot of emotion
Vega
to it.
hit his daughter for like half of the last season.
That's true. Yeah, he had his daughter because technically this is something that he shouldn't be doing, and well, yeah, so he can sympathize with that. You know,
he had a stowaway digital code of his daughter's transport beam.
And just last episode, Spock broke the rules and stole the ship to go and, you know, solve a crisis, and that was accepted. So yeah, if like this would be just straight up racism of Illyrians if they didn't like be lenient on her.
Pretty much.
Yeah. No. So. Yeah, and that was actually something else we didn't mention. Is at the start of the episode, like they're offering like a deal where she won't even go to prison. She'll just be like discharged, dishonorably discharged from Starfleet, and that'll be it. And Una's like going to make a stand, and Peck's girlfriend, who is Batel, how do you say her name?
Probably Batel.
Have they ever said it? I don't know. But she
they did.
Yeah, she. Wait, is that her from
She's from the pilot episode.
No, I know she was also in the finale when she came to arrest Una.
Yeah.
Like, I know she's from this. I'm not that thick. No. Is that her from Winona Earp? It is. Do you know what? I didn't even recognize her. I just recognized her name when I looked at the credit. She looks so different, like with her hair tied back in like a uniform one. Whereas Winona Earp, she's like, you know, she's like swaggering around with jeans and a leather jacket, and she's like a badass.
Oh, is she good in that show?
She's the best part of it, probably. It's not a great show, but it's. Well,
I think she's just terrible.
Maybe it's not the right type of character for her. Maybe she's like the proper, like
she
uptight.
comes off so stiff, like she doesn't know how to walk, like she's in a James Wan film or something.
Whoa, that's a harsh statement. This performance belongs in a James Wan film is like one of the most hurtful things you could say to an actor. Come on now.
Or fortunate.
No. That's a horrible thing to say to someone. You might as well just.
I think she's awful.
No, but she early on, like, she makes the point to Pike that she's actually called in a lot of favors to get this lenient deal because she thinks this is the best thing she can get, is just to not get that much punishment. She just has to leave Starfleet. But obviously Una wants to make a stand, so you kind of like, even at the start of the episode, it feels like she's not wanting to be that harsh about it. She's trying to like get her the best deal she can from her side of the fence, but ultimately it's like, once she turns that down, it's like, oh no, now she's facing up to 20 years. Now they want to make an example out of her to like make it clear that this is not on.
Gonna send her to the penal colony that Kirk got sent to.
I was thinking at the end that like immediately she's back on the ship as the first officer, and I was thinking there would maybe be an argument to not let her be an active officer still, even if you're going to like, you know, absolve her of all the crimes. But I guess it still kind of applies that she's sought asylum in Starfleet, and this is still her having asylum, which I guess on some level makes sense. It still fits the technicality, they said. But I thought there might be a little debate about like whether or not she should be returned to active duty still. But I guess we just went with it.
Yeah, I guess they're just like, well, she's not guilty, so back to work.
Yep.
I thought that there would be some sort of punishment also.
I wonder, does that mean she'll more openly use some of her enhancements in front of people now to like save the day?
Might as well. She's got asylum.
You know, it's like you know how like Data every so often would like use his super strength to open the door or, you know, pick up something heavy. Like, I just wonder if we'll see Una just like do little pizza, stuff. Like,
Mhm.
yes, I'll pick up this
I don't
huge
really-
battery.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what her augments mean. Like, there was that episode about it, but I don't really remember. Does she like? So she has super strength. She's able to survive in areas that are more toxic to humans. But does she have super strength?
I don't know. I was just an example because Data had super
Okay.
strength.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was something that happened I forgot about.
Oh no, she's like Superman. She flies around. She's got heat vision. Like, no.
Maybe we're going to see some unlocked Una.
I don't think it's going to be that extreme, of course. But no, I mean, it's yeah. Honestly, it might just be a respiratory system because they set up that they augment people so they can breathe in this planet they now call home. It could just be a respiratory system upgrade and nothing else, basically.
Yes, and like they glow. They can like maybe withstand heat or something.
Well, they said not all of them glow.
She did in the episode in the first season though.
Well, yeah, but I think she can control it. I mean, I think the point she made in the trial though is that some of them can't control it and will just glow sometimes because of whatever, and that's how that like one kid got caught and got taken off by the Federation Gestapo.
Yes.
Which is the point. The Federation should not have a Gestapo, right?
They probably shouldn't have like a Section 31 either. But
Probably not. I guess that's the fundamental thing of any regime that's set up is you have to admit that sometimes you need something that you technically say you shouldn't need.
Mm-hmm.
What are you gasping at?
Oh, I just remembered that you know what the Federation does have? I don't know if you know this yet. It's not really a spoiler though. But they do have time cops.
I don't think I knew that. It doesn't surprise me they have time cops.
Well, I mean, if people there's a lot of time travel.
Yeah.
Someone's got to keep things in order.
That's fair. We're not talking about time travel in this episode, though. We got Illyrians to talk about and augments.
I know. I just wanted to, bring up the potential of the greatest crossover of all time.
Yeah.
Which would be Time Cop and Star Trek.
So it's a shame that you didn't love this one as much because as it was going, I was kind of like, I think this is one of the best episodes the show's had, and I'm really happy to get it here in episode 2 because episode 1 was just kind of a mixed episode and it was like one of the weaker ones. So it was really reassuring to get episode 2 to be like, no, the show's not, because there's always a worry that when a show that you like comes back for season 2, that it's maybe just going to not be as good in general. It was really just reassuring that episode 2 was like, no, this is actually one of the best episodes they've done so far of the show. So
yeah,
rest easy.
Like The Naked Now.
Are you saying that's an example of a good episode?
Episode 2.
It's a fun episode. I don't know if I'd say it's a good episode.
One of the best.
I think you're conflating what I'm trying to say here a little bit.
Yes, I will say, I got some bad news before I started watching this episode, and it's later than we intended to record because of it. But so maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace. But I do agree with all the points you're making. Like it's well done. It's certainly well written. The themes are very strong in this one, and the parallels to real life, are very clear. And we always love it when Star Trek does it. That's why I think this one's going to age really well. Like we're going to look back on this one and be like, oh, that was good. That was a good one.
Yeah, I think this one will probably be fairly timeless as well, because I think everything it kind of references already feels like they're, like obviously a lot of it's still relevant today. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying a lot of the specific things that they point out are like trying parallel to have been a thing for a long time. And the more extreme examples that you think of when you talk about them are all a bit older now, whether it's slavery or Nazi Germany or whatever. Like
I think I just still struggle with the characters in the show. Like obviously they're very good characters, and some of them are very well established from previous shows. It's just the tone of this series is very like Riverdale in space or something, like it feels like everyone feels like they're just really happy and like running around, and they're all gonna share milkshakes, melted milk afterwards.
Did you watch Riverdale?
It's a very but like it comes off that way. or like Archie,
Yeah,
Archie comics.
the
you
Riverdale
know?
TV show was actually like full of dark soap bullshit. Everyone was not
Okay,
happy.
maybe it's a bad example, but I don't know. I try to use something that's modern, and I don't watch a lot of modern TV. But like it comes off like very like everything's like I want Star Trek to be optimistic, but I still I don't want to be one of those olds that are just like, oh, this is not my Star Trek. But it just is so tonally different for me that I do struggle still with these characters being so like jovial and running around and
it's so wild though, because that's what makes
and
this
hugging each other. That's so weird to me.
But that's what's so wild to me about this opinion is that that's what makes this refreshing to me compared to all this other modern Trek that is trying to be dark all the time. Like
well, I don't need it to be dark either. Like I think there are two ends of different extremes, you know. I do think maybe this is an overcorrecting for Discovery, and it's going a bit too dark. But even Discovery has overcorrected too much for me as well. So like I thought the first season was great. I know it got a lot of backlash. I know you disagree, and that's what this feels like. But also Discovery season 2 like was such a weird pendulum swing to the other side of things where I'm just like, where are you going with the show? Yeah, it was bizarre. It was a bizarre season. And that was also the season that, you know, sprung this series. So I just feel like it's hard for me to attach to this show like everybody else is. And I don't know why, but I think I just want it to be a little bit more professional.
Okay, just to clarify what you're saying here, because I think people might misunderstand what you just said. When you say professional, you're talking about the characters acting more professional, not that the show feels unprofessionally made. I just want to make that clear, because that's what it could be misinterpreted as.
It could be, but I don't, yeah, that's not what I mean at all. I mean, like, I want the characters, because that's what I'm having a hard time with, to just act a bit more professional. And I don't know why that's, it's just, it's creating this wall that I just can't bust through yet.
All right, well, I think, you know, the episode, I think, is a success on its own terms. Like, everything it's trying to do, I think it does quite well. I think I cared about, like, what the characters, like, were fighting for by the end. So, you know, it was good. Had a good time. So, looking forward to the rest of the season. So I suppose that'll pretty much wrap up the thoughts. Yeah, so there you go. That'll do this episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Of course, let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments. You can like, subscribe, ding the bell, all that stuff. And of course, you can support all the content and help keep it coming by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting over there with some monies. Ideally, we'd live in a world like Star Trek where we don't need monies anymore, but we do. So go to Patreon for Spock.
You got cats to feed. Yeah.
I got cats to feed. Got me to feed. I'm getting hungry, actually. You know, we had some technical issues during this, so there was some pauses. There was a tangent I had to cut out. So, whatever the runtime is of this episode, just know that it went longer, and I am starving because there's been so much talking.
You don't have to cut it out. You could just leave it in.
It's so off topic. It's such a long tangent.
It's reasons why I don't like this show. So maybe people want to hear it.
Yeah, but it ended up just being a debate about Star Trek Discovery, though, for like 15, 20 minutes.
Well, that was your fault. Yeah, you can just leave it in. Just leave it in. Leave it in. It would make me very happy, and then I won't have to quit the podcast if you leave it in.
Whoa! There was no ultimatum before. What is this? No. I will not negotiate with terrorists, okay?
Well, I will shoot the hostage. And that is, the hostage is this show.
No. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. This has been our thoughts on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. We'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Do I have an outro for this that's different from the regular one?
I don't think so.
No. Have you got any vanilla?